Tarttelin,
Hi.
welcome to cinema. All right, let's do that again. What is that in my? Oh, it's a grey hair. Okay, so we'll start again. Tarttelin, welcome to Cinema, Life and Everything. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm just getting my seat sorted out. Just you know what it is. I'm too short-sighted and I need to be a bit nearer the screen. But I don't want to put my glasses on because
All right, we'll put your glasses on.
don't.
At all.
Ugh. There we go. That's a bit better.
Including that stays in because it's a wonderful moment.
Okay, cool.
And in a familiar looking living room. Okay, so before we decide, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good today. Yeah.
Good. And so you have been on my predecessor or my previous podcast, Seduction Towards Masculinity, quite a few times, quite a regular guest. But for first-time listeners or first-time viewers on YouTube, would you like to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Abby. I am a writer. That's what I'd like to do when I wake up in the morning. I think I don't want to get up, and then I think just look at the notes on my phone or look at the latest PDF I've sent myself and think, oh, I could write that chapter. And so that's what I do. And I also like to think that I'm kind of an artist. I started out as a performer, as an actress, and I love it. It fits like a glove. So I still enjoy doing that. I got a new agent last year, which is really exciting. And I've also been the lead singer in a band, in a like feminist punk band kind of.
Check them out on Spotify, Girl Boy, by the way. Very, very, very good band as it goes.
Thank you. The music's more like indie pop actually, but the sort of sentiment is punk. And what else do I do? So at the moment I'm writing books, and I'm writing a new book. I'm exploring autofiction, which is a really interesting experiment. And I'm also working on some projects for screen. So my book Golden Boy, which is my second novel, is being developed for a BBC film, and I've been working on that as a screenwriter and collaborator, and co-screenwriting it with the director. And I've also got a couple of pilots in the work, so we'll just see if they get sold. And so that's what I do. And you know, I'm also your ex-partner, and so that's how I know you.
That's part of what you do. You have to deal with me. But so I was going to ask him one of those things, with such a varied and artistic and creative range of things you follow, is there a particular way that you figure this is the one I want to follow today, like you almost said when you wake up in the morning? Or is there a way that you know, okay, this is the path you should be going at the moment? Is it very intuitive, or do you think about, okay, is it more planned and you want to focus more on this now?
Well, I guess like looking back, I've always stuck to something my mum says, which is survivors keep doing things. And so the moment I finish one project, I think, right, what's the next thing coming up? I do like to make plans. I know I've sort of passed that on to you, the idea of making a yearly plan, and then I do seasonal plans, and I do monthly plans as well. So I like to have in my head, oh, for these 3 months, I'm going to be focusing on these few projects. I might do something like 3 projects within those 3 months, but you know, all at the same time. Think of like kicking the things a bit further down the road. Sometimes that's what you have to do. And then I guess in terms of what I think, oh, I'll be working on that this month. At the moment, it's about finances really, and I find that really motivating. So you know, so I'm trying to get into TV because I know that is a little bit more sort of steady when you do get income, in a sense. Like I've been sort of paid every yearish for the Golden Boy film, and then you know, my books. I've got projects that I want to work on that I know aren't that commercial, and because I've said to myself, right, we're focusing on finances. the projects that are more commercial are coming first. But that's okay. And actually, it's really helpful to make you focus on what you really, really want to do. I know absolutely I want to write a memoir about our daughter that we lost. That's not the most commercial book, but it's still in my mind. And as I'm working on what I think is a more commercial book about turning 30 in Hackney, I know that I have that in my mind, and I know that's in my plan. So yeah, it's kind of a balance of like, they're all passion projects, but which are more commercial. And so I'm not dispassionate about anything I do. And I always think that you should have a reason for putting something into the world, because there is an awful lot of noise out there. And it's very important, in my opinion, to only add something of value to the noise.
But wouldn't you also say sort of like, yeah, I understand that's a really, really good point you've made, but also about if you're adding something to the world where maybe you have the innovators that feel like you do, where, okay, this is something that I'm passionate about. And then there are people that innovate, and there are people that realize, okay, this is the first thing that's come into my head for whatever reason. Barbie now is really popular. So suddenly you're going to see a glut of maybe films about female dolls, or as in terms of superhero films, Iron Man did well, and suddenly everybody's jumping on a superhero bandwagon. So there's a certain level of passion, but then the people could still be passionate about it, but it becomes more commercial. Something that's innovative may not seem that it might be commercial to begin with, but then it resonates with a great deal of the public or a great deal of our audience, and then people can see the commercial, like you say about the you may feel that the book you would write about our late daughter may not, it might resonate with a load of mums, and it might not just mums, might resonate with just a load of people. It can hit it. Sometimes things can resonate in a very interesting way because it's just not been seen before. Maybe it's a uniquity that can create commercialism sometimes as well, because it's a new way of looking at things.
I mean, that's definitely something that happens. I think some things are more of a surefire, not that anything ever is.
No.
But with the Barbie movie, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I've been posting about that a bit on my Instagram channel. I directed, like I did direct them.
Oh, they're amazing. They're amazing.
These dolls, because I own tons of Barbies. I was super into Barbies, and I know that the Barbie movie is directed, it's so aimed at people like me. I was just a Barbie nut in the 90s, when Barbie kind of had her renaissance. And so I made these feminist Barbie films. And I think really the Barbie movie, it goes for the same tone as the things that I was doing, where like they're like, oh my God, I've got to think about heteronormativity and where it fits in my life, like just silly, oh my gosh, I didn't know about smashing the patriarchy. Like, but in the world of my feminist Barbie, like everybody's super, super feminist. And there's some kind of like microaggressions that people meet in every one of the little vignettes. Like in the first vignette, Ken's reading a biography of Hillary Clinton, and he says something that I heard at the time when she was going for president first time around and second time around. She's just not commanding enough to lead a country. And I thought, oh, that's weird, because like I grew up, my mum being the main wage earner, and my mum being a very successful leader of people and manager. She's a brilliant manager. And like when I heard it at the time, I was like, what do people mean? Because I just didn't grow up in a world in my own house where people said older women couldn't lead. And anyway, in the first vignette, Barbie sat next to Ken in bed reading, and she suddenly realizes that his worldview doesn't fit with hers, and that's not the world she wants to live in. And she goes, I'm leaving you. And then
don't spoil them. People should really check them out. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. But I think
yeah, with the Barbie movie, but to your about sort of commerciality and having meaning, I'm a huge believer in entertainment. I really
yes,
don't believe in writing something that's, you know, for an elite.
yes, the highbrow and lowbrow, exactly.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not like. I think the most intelligent communication is communication that is clear,
Yes.
and when you receive it, you know what it means. Um, Even if what it's trying to put across, or one of my films that I selected as like this, is a bit of ambiguity, but you
Mm.
kind of know what it means. Um,
I,
and for reasons I've mentioned on my Instagram that people can go and look at if they want, I won't get into now. But the Barbie movie did not get there for me. Like, it wasn't enough, and
enough.
it wasn't enough. Yeah. Um, yeah, go on. Sorry, what were you going?
I was just going to say, to your point, you made a really interesting point there that for me, um, I also don't agree with highbrow and lowbrow. I think so. Oppenheimer, Barbieheimer, the whole deal with that. The most I've heard about Oppenheimer is either people saying, "Oh, it's really long," or people just saying, "Oh, it's a masterpiece. It's beautifully made." But aside from that, there's not really much of a conversation apart from, well, nuclear war's bad, isn't it? Whereas I'm quite enjoying Barbie in the fact that young and old went to see it. People who may not have even seen it are completely against it for
Yeah,
like it's demasculinization or it's destroying the patriarchy. Some people are very pro it, but I just think the most important thing for art for me is to create debate and to create debate amongst the biggest amount of people as possible. And sometimes like you say, with that elitism in art, they're going to go, oh, it is so nuanced and amazing, but you wouldn't understand. You wouldn't understand this. It's too much for you. Whereas I think you need those summer blockbusters that have the subtext. Just whether for me Barbie hit or it didn't hit, the amount of conversations I've had about Barbie, I'm like, this is a very important film because at least it's starting conversations amongst people, which I think is the ultimate thing of all art.
yeah, I kind of like when I posted I said like 5 things that just weren't good enough in Barbie. I posted a video review of that, and I think what I'll do this week is maybe like what I would have wanted to see, because I wanted to
Mm,
see more feminist joy. I wanted to see like Ken. I used to see these memes prior to Barbie coming out where he goes, "But it's Barbie and Ken. It's never just
yeah,
Ken." And I thought it was going to be a story about how, like, it's okay for Ken to be like a submissive who doesn't have a job and takes care of their home and
yeah.
like provides the joy in life. He's beach, and when Barbie comes home from her career as a doctor, he's like, "Come to the beach, babe." And for that it's like a really valuable thing to be in someone's life, and that he can be his own person while being a support. And I thought that would have been very, very feminist, because for all the obvious reasons, but also because women have played so many supporting roles, and particularly as mothers. And it's a biological thing that you can't get away from, that imperative for a lot of people. When you have children, you are then in a supportive role. And to say that a supportive role and a domestic role has true value would have been so powerful, I think. And that it's one choice amongst many. And maybe there are Barbies doing the same thing, but maybe there are lots of Kens doing the same thing in Barbie world, because it's more equal. And I thought that would have been so cool. But yeah, Oppenheimer really hasn't reached me, and I agree. There's a lot of value in, like, I felt bad posting my video in a way, because it feels like, well, and I've seen lots of things about how in Arabic countries and Asian countries that, actually it's, for women there, it feels really liberating.
Mm,
But I just find it a bit hard that it doesn't, it didn't do anything new for me. Like, I did read a review online, and I think I maybe tagged that person in the comments on my review, to say like, "Oh, I read this and this was really helpful." He did a review where he was saying that um, that it just summarized like everything that we've learned over the past 7 years, and it didn't really break new ground. And I thought that was part of why I didn't come away as satisfied. I came away with a bit of a bad taste in my mouth, because this was like, God, you know, you had such an opportunity. It's Barbie. Everyone's going to go see it. Doesn't matter what you do with it. So you could really go above and beyond. And I just think, like, I feel like, oh God, do I live in a world where that's above and beyond? Because I don't live there. I'm in my little bubble of writing, you know, feminist fiction. And yeah.
I just sort of thought the other thing that got me as well was like everybody was assigned their role. So like President Barbie was President Barbie, and I guess, you know, it's sort of like you can be anything you. I would have liked maybe the aspiring to be a little bit more in it. They were talking about the broken toys, and you know, it felt like everyone's inclusive. Everyone has a place in life, which I get that message. And when we were there and watching the little girl bring all her Barbies and sit them on the front of the stage to watch the Barbie movie, I thought things like that were very beautiful. But I guess for me, one of the big sticking points was it was sort of like you have your place in life and that's it. And I don't know, maybe that was just my way of reading into it. But anyway, Barbie wasn't even one of the films you selected, and we ended up talking.
No, but I mean, it's a really significant movie, and it will remain so because of how much it's grossed. You know, it'll be really studied.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, you know, very much like as Jaws become the first summer blockbuster, and Steven Spielberg managed to put a horror movie for little kids to watch. I think in a way, after years of superhero movies, it's a nice resounding thing for me that they made an event out of two films, a very sort of art house dark film about nuclear power, and another film about a child's toy and seeking identity and inclusivity. And whether it completely fires on all chambers or not, I'm hoping that next year's summer blockbusters will sort of start to follow that vein a little bit more, rather than seeing someone in a cape.
Well, it's interesting what you say about that we've had so many superheroes, and you're right. And I think Hollywood itself is like, oh God, like we have to keep making these until we have a new idea, but we don't, you know, they're scared of new ideas as well, rather than ideas based on IP, which works for me because obviously I write intellectual.
Yeah, very good point.
But I wonder whether they will start making studios will start making films based on successful toys. And
oh God, yeah, and video games. After Super Mario Brothers has done so much money, I guarantee all of the video game IPs have been bought up now.
Yeah, but I think that's, you know, with Barbie, that's obviously it's a film about a toy, but I think, you know, it's a film about women and feminism, and I think a lot of women went out to see it because it was marketed towards them, and not just because it was about feminism and women, but because you have Ryan Gosling with his top off, and you know, that's marketed to women. And you know, I think women often, well, in the past, very much underrated as a movie audience. I remember reading about Jennifer's Body and that release and it being targeted towards teenage boys, and thinking, why on earth would it be, like, I bought it at the time, why would it be targeted towards teenage boys? It's got two actresses I love in it, and it's written by a writer who is this very cool feminist.
Diablo Cody, he was who done Juno. That was a complete the advertising on that was mind-blowingly weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, the studio thought that it was going to be a bomb right from the off, because they showed it to an audience of teenage boys and they didn't love it. And so they didn't put much money behind it because they thought they just had a flop on their hands. And, you know, in subsequent years, and like shout out to Reese Witherspoon and her production company, because I think, you know, a lot of credit needs to be given to her for doing Wild and Funny Blonde Girl, being part of that. I think that she made a lot of a difference to the narratives that were out there, and showed people that you could make money marketing to women.
So that completely agree. So talking about superheroes films and films about toys, would you like to tell everyone about your choices of Superman 1 and 2 and Pikachu the movie, please?
Those aren't my films. Yes,
you've actually bought the DVDs. You're super prepared.
I did. Well, I had them to hand.
There we go.
So I have to say, like, I was surprised at myself for not choosing Star Wars 1, 2, and 3. As in I think 4, 5, and 6 they're supposed to be, but I mean the originals,
Yeah.
they are very, very top for me. But these are like, I don't know. I think these just kind of edge them outside. I have so much love for them.
God blimey, it's Mary Poppins.
It's Mary
It's
Poppins.
impossible. What's that?
I watched this not that long ago. It was, I don't know how much you've said to your viewers about this, but
say, because people who might be listening to it on Spotify, say all 3 names of all the 3 films, and then we can start.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Mary Poppins,
Young
Adult, and
Young Adult.
Young Adult, yeah, by Diablo Cody, and written by, and Thelma and Louise.
Bangers. Amazing. Yeah. Really enjoyed watching them again. So
what should I just start talking about them?
pick one, and we will go. We will go with it.
So let's start with Mary Poppins.
It's Mary Poppins.
Yeah, I watched this. I rewatched it recently. I loved it when I was a child. I used to watch it with my nan all the time. It's really weird. Like I call her, her name to me is Nanny, but because of people who are quite wealthy, and like I work in London and in publishing and stuff, sometimes when I say nanny, people assume like a 90s au pair. But my actual nanny, who I'm related to, I used to watch this all the time at her house, and along with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Bedknobs and Broomsticks, it was a DVD that they had that I watched a lot. And we also watched Rodgers and Hammerstein movies together, like the King.
Wow.
Yeah, and I rewatched it recently on an anniversary of I think it was one of our, because we had, four kids together and we lost them all. And it was the anniversary of one of their dates. And I think I came home from their woodland, and I thought, I just want their birthday to keep going, kind of thing. So I put it on, and I had their Teds with me, and I watched it, and it was just magical, and I felt like overjoyed the whole film, and I was smiling so hard, and it was just such a magical film. And one of the things I like about it is that I think a lot of films marketed to children nowadays are full of jeopardy, and honestly I can't watch. Like, I find it really difficult to watch Wall-E because he's in peril so often. I'm like, no, oh my god, he's getting trapped, and it just hurts my heart to watch. No one's in peril, the worst thing is that the children get lost out in London, but then they really quickly bump into what's his name, Bert. So
yeah, a shout out to Dick Van Dyke for ruining my East End childhood for quite a few years. I was like, what?
Why?
Why that accent? God blimey, Mary Poppins. Like, that was something else.
As somebody from the Midlands, I thought it was bang on.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. That's when you don't see me all Cockneys talk like that. But no, it's incredible. There's actually quite a bit about the suffragette movement in that as well, isn't there? I remember that now.
Yeah, it's got this real undertone of feminism, and that song is just fantastic. And I went to a mutual friend of ours. I went over to her house, and she has a daughter who was about 2.5 at the time, and she could sing most of the soundtrack of Sound of Music and some of Mary Poppins. And my friend said, okay, we're going to sing the song, but I'm going to turn it down at a certain word, and you just listen to my daughter sing this word. So it's in the suffragette song, and it goes, we are fighting for our rights. And then she turned the music down, and her tiny little daughter sang militantly. And she was like, isn't that beautiful?
That's awesome.
Yeah, say militantly. And my friend is a Gen Z person who I think probably was a Corbynite, or I don't know if she'd identify as that or not, but like that idea of sort of militant politicism. So that was cool. And that song is beautiful. And it really has quite a strong message about George Banks wanting to be the like master of the household and wanting the children to conform to Victorian standards. And Mary Poppins and Winifred, the wife.
Who's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, I forgot about her character. Yeah.
Wonderful. And she's so beautiful in it. I can't remember which of these actresses she is. I'll have to look that up. But Glynis Johns, that's who she is. And yeah, she's just wonderful. And so, you know, they bring a lot of magic into the lives of the children, and they want the children to sort of be free. And George Banks comes around to that way of thinking.
It was just very interesting for me rewatching it, especially sort of, I saw Saving Mr. Banks a little while ago as well, and that fear I'm sorry, I've completely forgotten the name, but the original author had over the film was going to be Disneyfied and all of the important messages were going to be removed. And I'm amazed by the amount of subtext, the amount of different thoughts they get within the film about, you know, not losing your dreams, not conforming just to a corporate idea. And it's quite a radical film. And a lot of cinema, especially children's cinema at the moment, they're very much, you know, it has to be inclusive. You have to be preaching these messages. But you watch Mary Poppins from all those years ago, and they're getting all those messages in there, but it's a hell of an entertaining romp, if I can use that word. And the songs are absolute bangers as well. But like you say, you're singing along to it, it's catchy, but at the same time you listen to the lyrics and you're like, these are amazing messages. And the same thing with all songs, you learn all the words because it becomes a catchy tune. So I think it's a phenomenal piece of work. It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, the original author is P.L. Travers. I had to think as well, but
sorry, thank you. Yeah,
the back of the DVD box.
All I could think was what was it, the lady who played it, Emma Thompson, in the film.
Yeah, well, she's very memorable. Yeah, it's such a, and I think that's what makes me disappointed about things like the Barbie movie is that, you know, do you know what they were doing in the 60s? They were already doing this stuff. So, and I have to mention as well the art in the film. I think it's extraordinary how evocative and atmospheric, and you know, they have a whole cartoon sequence as well. But my sort of favorite thing about the art is every time I see rooftops in London or New York, I think of Mary Poppins, those rooftops and the smoke climbing up them and turning into stairs, and you know, the ability to run over the rooftops. And yeah, and I also, the songs are so well written, and you can't help but sing chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroom.
Do you have a favourite song? Is it the suffragette one, or?
Oh, I think probably Chim Chimney.
I think mine has to be Let's Go Fly a Kite, which makes me happy and sad at the same time.
That's a lovely song. Yeah, I cried at the end of the film. Yeah.
Oh, I think because they used it in Saving Mr. Banks as well, and you realise the whole thing with, if you haven't seen that anyway, people watching it as well, Colin Farrell does, talking about Dick Van Dyke, Colin Farrell quite well might well do the best Cockney accent or London accent I've ever heard in my life, considering he's from Ireland. And just the whole thing about kites and not losing your dreams, it all ties in. You can see the reasoning behind the reason that Mary Poppins existed and got made into a book and therefore into a film. And it's just such a wonderful like metaphor to the power of dreaming and the power of standing up for your dreams as well, and finding the joy and happiness in life.
Yeah, I also really enjoy saying things like Spitspot.
Oh, I mean, sorry, we should mention as well, which completely forgotten her name. Well, Julie Andrews, like absolutely phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Do you have a favourite scene?
Oh, I don't think I could pick one really, but I let me just mention the laughing scene where they laugh so hard that they end up on the ceiling. And I think on rewatch, it didn't get me as much as the first time, as sort of when I would watch it earlier. But yeah, I love that idea. And sometimes that song rings in my head down through the years, like, I love to laugh loud and long and clear. I love to laugh, and it's getting worse every year. Yeah, it's funny.
I just long for a film like that again, that just has an unbridled joy, and the script feels as cohesive. It doesn't feel like they're trying to shoehorn a million messages. It just felt fluid and free, and nothing sort of extraneous or pushed in there. It all just worked, you know.
Yeah, I think, yes, I really agree. And the unbridled joy thing, as I said, I'm a real believer in entertainment. You know, people work really hard, people work long hours. Currently in the UK, at least, and I know we're not having a good time globally, but in the UK, the hikes in the bills, our dirty water, our environment, everything is just getting worse because of corporate interests and the Conservative government, and their inability to deal with all the crises that we've been thrown. And we really need some escape, and I really need my escape to be well written. And
good one.
You know, when we came out, because I went to see the Barbie movie with Phil, for listeners, and when we came out of the film, Phil immediately said, "Well, I thought sort of it was a bit disjointed, didn't you say?" Like,
I felt like it might have been a result of a script think tank, and they were like using a few different script ideas in one film.
Certainly it was, because they chopped and changed the Barbie script for such a long time. And in fact, Diablo Cody was at one time a writer.
I'd love to have heard that.
Nobody's like covering that and the development process and why it ended up the way it did. And it really astounds me. And yeah, and there were some things that I really felt, including the ending and the beginning, like, how did this get through a development process? And it felt to me like some of the things in the film were from other drafts and expanded, and some of the things in the film were from a brand new draft where the studio went, oh, just thank God, like, yeah, they're going to do it, just let them do whatever they want to do, and didn't even give notes, you know. But I could be wrong, and it could be that
it could,
bits I don't like are a result of studio notes, but it just felt really tonally up and down. But I think the structure was the main issue in terms of the writing. And you know, as you say, a film like Mary Poppins is so well structured, and I really miss kind of like 90s cinema and 60s cinema for that just being good, for the just like being a good film that you can watch. And I think, you know, 90s thrillers, they can be quite cheesy, they can be quite on the nose, but they have a 3-act structure and they really like fill me up in terms of entertainment. If I'm on the sofa of a night and I'm knackered after a day of work, I want to watch something that I know is going to be cohesive, good entertainment. I'm not going to be pissed off at the writing, or that it, you know, that it's way too long or something. And Mary Poppins is like that. It's really, really, really well made.
I just think it's, the way you brought up 90s, the 90s had quite a big market for so much now, DVD, and 60s and 70s films. The producers or the studios were much more inclined just to give the director, who used to usually be the script writer as well, or the script writer and director, a final edit, and just have a purity of vision. So what they wanted to film got filmed exactly how they wanted it. The producers would invest the money into it, and they had faith that if it was going to bomb, it was going to bomb. If it was going to be a success, it was going to be a success. But there was no tampering. Where I think now there seems to be a bigger emphasis towards think tanks and, like you say, screen tests, and just if something isn't working slightly, that deal to meddle with it to try and make it the most financially successful, as opposed to having a pure voice that will stand the test of time.
I think that's right. I think it's about the commerciality of the product, and that and I say 90s and 60s films, really I'm talking about the history of cinema. And I'm saying that I prefer old films to new films, because in general, because very much since the 2008 recession, and because of additional issues. But I think it was really then that the ball started rolling toward, you know, certainly within the publishing industry, it was like, let's publish celebrity memoirs because we know that they're going to make them back and sell. And in the film industry, it was, let's publish big action movies. Let's base the film on something. So it's not just a director with a vision or a writer with a vision.
Or a new concept.
Yeah, it's not new. It's a concept that's been tried and tested, and those are the films that we're going to pick up and sell. And then you're right, people come in with copious notes in order to try and make it the most commercial it can be. But also, I would say that when you come in with notes, you sort of, you know, as a writer, you can establish a credit for yourself that might get you paid more, or as a producer, you can get paid more. And so I think people feel like they can come and put their stamp on films, but they're not the writer or the director. And I disagree with that mightily. And I think here in the UK, when it comes to developing films and the sort of studios that we've got that develop films, that there's too much interference, and I would prefer to see something quite raw but interesting, than I would something that when I'm watching it, I'm so aware of why this has been made. And as a voter for the British Independent Film Awards, that's, you know, it feels like it's increasingly the case that I'm watching British independent cinema that's had some sort of support or interference from a kind of studio, or somebody that's like a studio. And I can see that it's trying to, you know, I am very, as you know, I'm very progressive, and I want to see a different world than the world that we live in. And in all of my projects, I'm thinking heartily about diversity and representation and equality. But mostly what I see when I look at these kinds of films that I'm talking about is people trying to really loudly tick a box to the point where it feels really inauthentic, like they themselves don't super believe in making things diverse, or like blind casting, you know, colorblind casting or gender blind casting and things like that. They wouldn't do them, but now it's become the thing. They have to do it. And so that's what we see on screen sometimes, I think. You see these films that are so, let's hit every nail on the head, but really purposefully. And so the audience knows just how woke we are.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
it's not, it doesn't help. It doesn't help to have films that feel so academic, like some sort of exercise in diversity, rather than like they have a true belief in changing a world and representing things in so many little ways, you know, thinking about all the background characters, all the staging, like where things take place, what narratives we tell, and kind of coming back to the idea of entertainment. How good is this film? Because if you're going to make a film that represents, you want to make a really good film. You don't want to make like a film that feels like an exercise and goes out to an elite and gets accolades just because it ticks some boxes artificially and in an inauthentic way.
I think that's so interesting. I completely agree. And it just, when you were speaking, it just brought me back to when Korean cinema got like popped quite a lot recently with Parasite and stuff. And everyone's like, oh, it's so amazing. And I was thinking, yes, it is. But what you're seeing quite a lot there is just a director that was not in the corporate system, or I don't know what system it's in, but it was basically allowed to make the film he wanted to make. Yeah, using the actors he wanted to do, and then simply because it doesn't matter if it's in a different language, if it's a purity of vision, if it's the story that needs to be told without, I think the thing you're getting at there, you can feel, especially in films these days, that you're being lectured. You need to understand this point. I'm making a point now, as opposed to just allowing the art to perform as it wants, and you take the messages that you want. That's the purity of art for me. You take the messages you want to take, and you can watch Mary Poppins or the other two films that we're going to talk about in a little while. Throughout the years, you may get multiple messages from them because it's a pure vision, as opposed to it'll be very time centric, and you'll watch a certain film and go, oh, this was very much of its time because this was the message we were promoting that's very current at the moment.
Yes, I was just trying to look something up because I wanted to tell you that I am currently reading. It's only a small book. I don't know why I'm currently reading it. I'm just got a little way in before I put it down. I'm writing a book at the moment. That's what the issue is. So I tend to just focus on the writing. But so Michaela Cole has written. It's come out from Ebury Press. It's called Misfits: A Personal Manifesto. I think she talks about this in it, as far as I have read so far. But I was going to say, yes, there's a purity that you feel when you watch something like Parasite, and you don't feel the noise of other people's opinions. You feel like this. I can imagine that this has just come from one person. Yeah. And Michaela Cole is the creator of I May Destroy You and Chewing Gum, and she's a Black British female writer, and she has been sort of like given, hired to write and develop her work. And I think that I'm feeling in the book like she's going to talk about how she's the writer and she's this voice that wasn't there before in the room, but everybody else then tweaks and edits her. And I feel like that's happening. Like, my feeling is hire diversely and make sure that people are represented. And even as I'm saying this, like, make sure the people that are hiring them aren't just from Oxbridge and upper class. And so and then allow people to make work. Hire somebody. I'm from Grimsby. Hire someone from Grimsby and just say to them, yeah, just make work now. We want to see your point of view. We don't want to like, and I'm certain that this is going on just because I have worked in publishing and film for a long time, and I feel the vibe. But I'm certain that there will be, people who are Oxbridge graduates, they're upper class, they are working at the top levels, and they're looking at people from these backgrounds and thinking, yeah, but we've got to manage them. Because after all, they don't know what they're doing.
That's enough voice. That's enough opinion.
Yeah, but even seeing them in a sort of child role, seeing them as a subordinate and somebody who, because they don't talk like they do, because they don't dress like they do, because they don't seem like they have it together like they do, that they're obviously not quite on it and they need to be managed. So we brought them in to fulfill this diversity thing that we're patting ourselves on the back because we're all so cool. And but we're going to manage them. And I think that I'm certain that that's what happens, because that's what happens as a creative as well, and as an actor and a writer. Those are the kinds of people that get managed as if they're difficult, but in fact, like, they are the talent and they're the only talent. So yeah, it's interesting the way that the industry works, and that you do see it visually on screen as well, I think, when that happens.
Right, that was Mary Poppins.
Yeah,
should we talk about I knew it was all right. Like, as listeners and viewers can probably tell, we have history and lots of opinions about things.
Yeah, sure do. This is young adults. It's
I was so happy you picked this. I thought it was going to be this or Tully.
I should really have said Robert Stevenson directed Mary Poppins, and the screenplay was by Bill Walsh and Don DeGrady, and it was based on the book by P.L. Travers. And so this is young adult, written by Diablo
Cody,
directed by Jason Reitman. It stars Charlize Theron and Patton Oswalt and Patrick Wilson and Elizabeth Reeser. But Charlize and Patton, I think, are the sort of just like they're incredible. They're so good.
Charlize Theron, she bounces about all over the place, but when she's allowed to flex her act, I mean, she's won Oscars, so obviously she's a good actor, but she's mind-blowing in this one because she's so understated. And again, sorry, go on. You why did you pick this?
God, I watched it last night because it was one that I hadn't watched in a while, and I had some of our kids' cuddlies with me, and I usually like set them up next to me if I'm watching a movie, and I was then like, I wonder if they're enjoying it. And I said to them, like, I know it's difficult to understand why we're watching this film. And I just was imagining, like, if you were young, it would be really difficult to understand why I'm watching this film, because it's not like a thriller. It doesn't have sort of an exciting plot in a way. And it's sort of, like when I mentioned earlier that if you're communicating really clearly, it's very intelligent and we get what you mean, even if you're aiming for ambiguity. Well, I was thinking of this film because, and I even went on last night and looked at some of the reviews, and it's like people don't think about this film. They don't have the same interpretation that I do. And I find that so weird, but I can understand it because, so Charlize plays basically the most popular girl in her school, cheerleader, gorgeous, and she was with this guy called Buddy for like 4 years, and he was the most popular boy, and they broke up, and she moved away to the big city, which is only Minneapolis. She becomes a writer, but only a ghost writer of young adult fiction. And the young adult fiction is really sort of petty, ridiculous, school-based, and the voice of that is very teenage, but in a bit of a bitter way. And it's kept her living there, really. And so when she gets a notice that her ex with his new wife has had a baby, she decides to go back to her hometown and liberate him from the boringness of his domestic situation. So
we talk, as an actor, we talk about intent and motivation, and I think it's not a concept film. Like, you talk about Jennifer's Body, okay, that had amazing messages, but it's a horror film. But this is just like, it's just a story about just a simple, not a simple character, very multifaceted character, but their intentions aren't great. But it's an honest, true slice of life. It's documentary like. I love it. I think it's incredible.
Somebody said that it was a character study, and I thought that was interesting. But I feel like there is a genre. It's like a quest movie.
Yeah, it's a hero's journey. It's just a very dark hero.
And I think the thing that spins it for me a little and makes it a bit confusing is that, this is that you find out that she's been through something quite traumatic with Buddy, and you feel like, oh yeah, that trauma could be one of the things that's actually keeping her stuck in that time. And it's done in a really beautiful way. She says, I wouldn't wish that to happen to anyone. And you think, God, she seems such a selfish character. But if in that moment she decides to say that, then that's, not.
She's got self-awareness.
Yeah, it's not a selfish thought. And I don't know. So as she sets off on this quest, and like he's clearly happily married with the baby, and like they're just living a kind of nice, cozy Gen X. It felt like, because of knowing a bit of Riot Girl history and sort of Seattle, like American life in the time of the 90s. They all grew up in the 90s, and there are all these like really good DIY bands. So the 90s in America was really big for DIY culture and Riot Girl culture, both of which I love and I'm a big fan of. And they're all kind of living. The film is set in autumn, which is another thing I like about it. It feels so nostalgic. It feels so, like returning to school. You return to school in the autumn, so that it reminds me of being a teenager. And it's such a hopeful film in a way, because she's so hopeful that she'll end up with him, just like every high school romance. But he's just some guy. Like, there's nothing special about him, really. As she stares at him dreamily as he stands at the bar, you're like, he just looks like some guy. And he works at the same place where he's always worked, and his dad works there, and she's like, oh, do you still work there? And he says, yeah, I work in ad sales now. I have lunch with my dad pretty much every day, sometimes a sub, sometimes a burger.
Like, just comfortable domestication, just happy with his life.
I don't know whether the film though is trying to say this guy's a loser, why is she so into him, or it's trying to say he's just a normal guy, because his job is kind of like, it does feel a bit losery that he's ended up doing the same thing that he always did, and yet he's a nice guy, he's a good dad, he loves his wife.
Yeah.
They seem to be enjoying their life. She's in a, like, his wife's in a band called Nipple Confusion, and they're playing their second gig at the local bar. They're just living a life and enjoying it. And I really feel like the film never comes down on whether, whether they are, or like, when I used to watch her, I used to think, obviously she's the one that's a little bit, she's got things a bit twisted. She's 37, she's not in her 20s. So the fact that she's still living in this space is a bit strange. You do find out she was divorced a few years ago, and so maybe she's just returned to a time in her head where she's just worshipped and it was great.
Yeah, big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, but it's so confusing what to think about the film in a way, because now when I watch it, I recognize, like, oh, it's quite, like, there are a couple of people calling the popular guy's wife online, they were calling her a bitch because the main character goes through this trauma, which is to do with losing a baby, I'll say. And then she invites the wife of the popular guy, who's called Beth, invites Mavis, our main character, to their baby naming ceremony. And so some people online were saying, what a bitch to invite her to the, but then Beth, the wife, really didn't feel like a bitch. She really wasn't played to be a bitch. She was so nice, and even when Mavis was yelling at her, she, like, doesn't say anything because she doesn't want to be mean. And so I didn't get that. But then again, when I thought about it, yeah, that was quite unfeeling to send her the invite. Yeah, and quite bizarre. But it was like she was reaching out, but maybe I mean, it is very difficult, I think, for people who haven't been through a loss to understand what it's like to go through a loss.
And I think as well, what I really liked about the film again as well was that, again, what you're putting the point there, there's no real villain or hero. There's no obvious, so there is a journey, but you're not really told how to feel about it. Again, when we talk about purity of vision and not you are being given a message now, this film really doesn't do that. And I sort of like the fact that she's come back to the small town again and people are sort of a bit of in awe of her. She made it, but in herself, she doesn't feel like a winner at all. She doesn't feel like she's made it at all. And then you see the husband and stuff, Buddy, he, in a way you can look at it, well, he sort of, even though he's never left town or whatever, he's very comfortable. He's very, and not in a nasty way. He has got everything that he wants in his life. So she sees it in a way, oh, I'm going to break you out of this. I'm going to give you what you always wanted. And he's like, well, sort of got what I want already. This is my life.
You know, it's interesting you saying that she doesn't feel good about herself, because I didn't get that when I used to watch this film. And I watched it over and over again. I used to have it on in the background because I just thought it was, I think one of the reasons I think it's really fun vibes is because it is that DIY, it's embedded in that DIY culture feel that Diablo Cody's films often have. But I also thought this came out at a time when in 2011, at a time when you really didn't see women being unpleasant on screen. And she's so unlikable because she just, I think, like, the direction is like, everybody smells bad. Everything smells bad. This whole town smells bad. And that's what the look she has on her face the entire time she's there. And I thought it was really, really funny. And I think it was bold of Charlize Theron to just go for it and to not make her likable. And but I think I was just thinking as you were talking that, yeah, it's not like it has a message, but the tagline could be, remember high school?
Yeah.
Because it brings you back to, remember high school, those dynamics. And we haven't even mentioned, like, my favorite bit about it, which is that she sparks up a friendship with this guy who it was very much a high school loser.
Yeah.
And he was played by the actor Patton Oswalt, who I love, and he is just hilarious. He is very bitter about life as well. But he was attacked in high school because some jocks thought he was gay, and he was very, very badly beaten. And it was national news until people found out that he wasn't gay. And then it was, just as he puts it, some fat kid getting beaten up in the woods. But he was really, very much physically hurt by it, and still carries those scars, literally. And he lives in his parents. He lives in the basement. I believe he lives in his parents. It was really unclear, but he lives with his sister, certainly.
Yeah.
And who is also a grown-up. Like, he's 37 and his sister must be about 35, and they still live with their parents. And she looks like she works at some sort of care home, potentially. She wears very 80s-y clothes. And he distills liquor, bourbon, in his garage. And he also, this is another thing that is so DIY culture that I so love, like comic book store culture, video store culture. He builds little models of like supervillains and superheroes by taking apart models and then putting them back together in different ways. I just love it. I just love the whole that he lives in the basement. There's this big basement. It's actually got 2 levels, and then he has the garage as well, where the cars should be. And I love the scene where she comes over to his house for the first time, and she sees him through these like plastic see-through bits on the garage door. And there's this song playing, and it goes, I better tell you when I. And I just love that moment. I used to play it over and over again. And I think probably I just came to love this film when I was feeling a bit like that. Like when I was in my early 20s, or even, how old have I been? Early 20s, mid 20s, and feeling like shit about some aspects of life. And, maybe still carrying around myself some like bitterness about high school and how things pan out. And I really connected. And I was a writer, and I am still.
Yeah.
But very much at the time, like, I was living in the States. I was a writer. Because I wasn't so bothered about my health, I would just like eat junk food whenever I wanted, which is what she does. And, wake up at 11 and write. And I work really hard, but I don't keep a schedule. And so I guess some of those things like made me laugh to see somebody being made fun of on TV that was just like me. So but Patton is my, I think, favorite part of the film.
Cracking film. No, all right then. So should we crack on to the third one? Then should we talk about an absolute Ridley Scott directed amazing film, Thelma and Louise? If you haven't seen it,
I honestly think this is probably my favorite film of all time. It's got a little fly coming around me.
Interesting, because mine is Fight Club.
Really?
Which is
both 90s. Both 90s.
Yeah, and both about 2 people. Well, allegedly. If you haven't seen Fight Club, spoilers.
This came out in 91. And get away from my head.
If you're listening to this, Abby's being attacked by a bug, in case you're wondering.
Written by Callie Curry and starring Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis.
Amazing.
It's just, I mean, what can you say about it? I feel like, and this is another reason I get frustrated with Barbie, this is the feminist film that breaks all feminist films.
Yes, 100%.
What are you doing?
It's flawless. Like
flawless.
When Ridley Scott gets it right, Christ almighty, does Ridley Scott get it right? But the level of acting in this, and even Brad Pitt's first role, Michael Madsen's incredible in it, Harvey Keitel. But
I love Michael Madsen in it. Yeah,
he's amazing. Yeah, like Michael Madsen plays Elvis or a scene.
He's so good.
But that's what I mean. There's no spare parts. It's a singular message. I get the impression this wasn't tampered with. Ridley Scott was very big on his edit, and it just, everything is at its peak. Everything is at the top of its game. But I don't think when they were making it, they were, we're going to make a masterpiece now. They're just making a true, pure film, and just everybody's everybody's artistic levels rise up to meet it. It's the soundtrack as well, everything about it, and it's effortless to watch. It flies past.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think Scott probably thought, I'm making a masterpiece, but
he probably does every time he makes a film, to be fair.
Yeah, it's like with Terminator and Terminator 2, also two of my favorite films of all time. Like, did they know what they were making? Maybe, because you have to have a certain amount of sass as a
yeah. I think you're not going to go, oh, that'll do when you're making something like Thelma and Louise. You must think this is incredible.
I think you're thinking as a director, you're like, I'm really good. You guys should know that I'm really good and I'm going to make a really good film. So give me your money. I'm the one. So I think the two lead, Gina and Susan, in it are just, pitch perfect. But also, I guess it's a film I like because I, grew up in the 90s and I really appreciate the aesthetic of that time. I really like that they very much showed just very clearly like how men are sexist. Like Gina has this husband who's like, you just get your butt back here, Thelma, or else.
Microaggressions, the whole time.
Not home making him dinner when he never spends time with her anyway. He's like, why have you gone? Where are you? And then, so that's her sort of husband who, society wouldn't point a finger at, but in fact, his behavior is awful. And then you meet, another version of like rape culture and patriarchal behavior of this guy who he dances with Gina Davis's character, and then I'm just gonna say Thelma. He dances with Thelma, and I think he buys both Thelma and Louise a drink, and then they're outside, and he's trying to kiss her, and she says, "No, come on, I have a husband. It was just a dance," and then he says like, well, come on, like, let me see the goods. I bought you drinks, kind of thing. And I've had people say that to me. I've had when you're like, staying over the night at a friend's house and they're suddenly like, but I bought you drinks all evening. And you're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You've got loads of money and I'm some impoverished 19-year-old. Of course you bought me drinks all evening or we wouldn't have been out,
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was a down payment on anything, but that's exactly how that I bought you, kind of thing.
You owe me.
Yeah. Well, no, I own you because I bought you. It's prostitution,
Yeah, so not I own you. You owe me. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. I'm saying it's not. I think it is transactional, but it's more like that complete possession. I now said your time for a while.
Yes.
And I can do whatever I want to you. And I think those are the, like, it's just such an obvious thing to say that people see women, that people who are, the patriarchal society sees women as either like a domestic figure who is like a mother and a wife and should not be leaving the house, or a prostitute. And that's exactly how Thelma gets treated within the first half an hour of the film. But it's so true. And I think, you almost see things are almost too subtle in some more modern representations of how women are treated. Because, maybe an executive would be like, oh, that's too much. We can't put that on screen.
Yeah.
But it's true. And the film does it so well.
I just think with these choices as well, especially Young Adult and Thelma and Louise, they have their flaws, but they're also realistic characters. That's the thing as well. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to talk about Barbie again, but I think there seems to be a real fear now to make a nuanced female character or a female character that can show flaws, or a hero's journey where they have to admit some mistakes to then. And this is not really Thelma and Louise. This is a bit more Young Adult. But even in Thelma and Louise, it's like that argument they have at one point about the money and stuff. It's like, you messed up. She did it for all the right reasons, that she was having a great time with Brad Pitt, but she messed up. She fell for a confidence scam. And you're just like, but you understand them more, because she was just trying to have a good time. She just wants some happiness in her life, you know. And I think that really resonated with me as well, that you see these characters and enable to act more and show flaws and show differences of opinion. It makes the film resonate even more. It makes it even more believable and authentic, because these are fully three-dimensional characters.
Well, I think, you know, it's interesting that you brought up the Brad Pitt thing. So he's this guy that they give a lift to, and then he and Thelma spend the night together, and then he steals all their money the next day, and it was all the money that they were going to use to escape the country, which is what they need to do. And Harvey Keitel, who's the police officer that's kind of trying to help them, he says, these girls, like, at every point in the journey, they're screwed over, kind of thing. And I thought that was such a clever, you know, power to the screenwriter, Callie Curry, such a clever, like, story about womanhood to tell, is that you're just screwed over all the time by all these people who want to take something from you and who have no respect for you. And that's what life is sometimes, lived as a woman, is that over and over and over again people do stuff, and the individual guy thinks, well, I just did that one time, but it's like, yeah, but there are so many other guys thinking, well, I just did that one time, you know, I just wasn't cool that one time. But you know, Thelma and Louise experience a lot of people being not cool to them
that one time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Excusing their behavior.
It does have a lot of empathy for the characters, and I think that comes out in the representation of the Michael Madsen character, Jimmy, who is Louise's on and off boyfriend. And he comes over and he lends her some money, and he tells her, like, he asks her to marry him, and he says, like, you know, I'm in love with you and I want to be with you, kind of thing. And she says, oh, Jimmy, why are you saying all the right things now? And they have a beautiful night together, and they're kind of like kissing at the diner. And then so he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go. And he really respects what she's asked him for. Well, but that's not true. Even when he punches a wall or something, or throws a lamp across the room, he's like, God damn it, Louise, what's going on? And she's like, I'm going to leave if you start doing this. Which is so something I've experienced. And you know, so that is not respectful. But in the end, he says, like, look, it's your life, you know. And he wants to know what's going on. He does want that from her, but she stands firm. And it's really, I mean, it doesn't sound it probably to some people, but it's really a feminist act to say, no, I'm not telling you. Just because you bug me and you're violent and you yell, I'm not telling you. And I get to decide where I set my boundaries. And then he does respect those boundaries, and he you know, sends her off, and she says, okay, well, I'll see you, like, we'll see each other on down the road. They agree. And it's a really beautiful scene. But there is a lot of forgiveness in the film, in that he's patriarchal. He's carrying around some bull. But, you know, we all are, in a sense. We grew up in that world, and she has love for him and she has empathy for him. And we have to live in the world as well. You know, it's very difficult, and I think potentially impossible, to find somebody who's not been touched by that kind of patriarchal narrative bull. But you know, I do also have a lot of empathy for everybody, because everybody, like, lots of people grew up in houses with violent dads or difficult fathers. So and that's what's influenced them to carry that stuff around. So I love that Louise has that much empathy. But I also think, I just wanted to say that, you know, when I was writing Golden Boy, which is about somebody who is intersex and has a non-binary identity, that the way I approached it was, Max, my lead character, is a human being, and that's how I'm going to write them. And I'm going to write them as if they're a human being to which all this stuff is happening. And I really feel that in Thelma and Louise, that they're not gendered by the gaze of the director. He sees human beings. You know, they're written as human beings, and he directs it like they're human beings who all this stuff is happening to. And they're not women to whom, oh, this stuff happens all the time, and they're like, oh, that's what happens to us. They're human beings, and they're like, no, this is unreasonable. Every time it happens, it's unreasonable, you know. And they set off on this road trip. The whole of Thelma and Louise is a road trip, for those who haven't seen it. And
they are literally on a journey.
Yeah, from the point where they set off, they've decided they leave their female roles behind, as this waitress in a diner who gets hit on all the time, that's Louise, or as this wife who gets, you know, dumped on all the time, that's Thelma. They leave their female roles behind, and they just become human beings. And so every time to them, it's unreasonable.
Yeah.
And I just love that about this movie. I love how it treated them like people. And yeah, I always feel like I identify as a human, you know, and I like to say, that. And I very much identify with sort of the history of womanhood, some of the real like issues and difficulties that you have to face because you're a woman, in terms of, you know, sort of the biology of things, and you know, when I've lost children, it's happened here and it's happened to me, and it's been very, very hard. And you know, you're physically like not in good shape, and I've had to have several operations and things like that, and all those things happen to me because I'm a woman. And I'm so mistreated by doctors. I'm talked down to all the time. I don't want to tell me things. It's constant. So obviously, and I've been catcalled at, you know, many, many, many a time, and grabbed and things like that. So it's obviously something I have to identify with, because I have had all that happen to me. But I prefer to think of myself as a human being. And being female is an aspect of myself, like having blue eyes. It just happens to be an aspect that comes with its own massive struggles. And also, because of those massive struggles, it comes with a lot of solidarity, because any group, you know, any LGBTQIA group, any minority, and women are half the world, obviously they're not a minority, but any group which has experienced discrimination has solidarity with each other and with the fight to end it.
Do you have I mean, I can't add anything to it. It's a perfect way of placing it. Do you have a favourite scene in Thelma and Louise at all? Tricky, because it's a wonderfully
I do. Oh. So they're in the car. It's pretty late on in the film, and Thelma says, I don't know how it comes up. I think it's a scene where she says, "I'm awake." Do you know what I mean? But I think I love that line about, you know, feeling awake, feeling like alive. I'm in my own life. Yeah. I'm partaking in it. But it moves on, the scene moves on to a line where Thelma looks at Louise and says, "I just couldn't go back. I couldn't live. I can't," no, she says, "I can't go back. I couldn't live." Wow. I love that line. Oh, just kills me every time.
I think that you actually brought it up, the Michael Madsen scene for me. I always find it hard to equate that is Mr. Blonde out of Reservoir Dogs. That's the same actor in both scenes, because he's so amazing in that diner scene. Like Michael Madsen, the character, has never met a pause that he doesn't like, but it's just the way just the way he moves and just everything about him. He's just so beautiful in that scene.
Yeah, I think that's a very romantic scene. Do you have a favorite Thelma and Louise scene?
The end. We can just, that bit. That's choking me up now when she goes, we can just go, and then she just motions with her head, and I'm just like,
let's just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going, because it's the whole. Oh, it's gonna choke me up, because it's the whole show don't tell. They put so much emotion when they both realise what they're going to do, and Harvey Keitel realises that they've pushed him into this position, that they don't have a choice. He could have brought them in, but like they can't now, because they've been, by the actions of other people against them, they've been forced into this situation. And it gets me. It blows me away. They were trying to make a Thelma and Louise 2 for years, and it's like, that's one thing I love about films back in that day as well, that these days where there's such a push and an impetus to make John Wick 10 or Guardians of the Galaxy 15, one film, one tale, done. And that's why it's perfect, because you don't. I'm amazed there's a Gladiator 2 coming out. I'm not angry at it, but I'm amazed there's a Gladiator 2 because you cut, the film is perfect in itself, you know. Stop there.
Yeah, and I think Thelma and Louise is more perfect than Gladiator.
I do too. I do too.
It was good. I remember enjoying it, but I think I have more sympathy for 20 years later. We think we found an unusual way to do something, but
yeah, I guess so. Rather than
we'll see. But I think with Thelma and Louise, yeah, that scene at the very end when they clasp each other's hands, I cry.
Don't.
I just think there's so much, and the scene that I like where she goes, I just can't go back. I couldn't live. She's real dusty. She's tanned.
Yes.
The wind is in her hair. She's wearing a cap that's really like my cap. Hang on.
The physicality. The way they,
She's wearing this cap. I think she's wearing it like that because it's really sunny.
They just become.
And she just looks like so cool. And she's got this cut off black top and she's wearing denim. And I just feel like, isn't that the way you want to live your life? You want to be, you want to be out on the open road with the sun and dust on your skin. And she just looks just so iconic.
Susan Sarandon, I mean, Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon are perfect in it. Like, I have my 3 favorite films, but I know it's an impossible choice to ask anyone because it will change daily. And honestly, after watching it again the other day, I knew it was up there anyway, but very comfortably Thelma and Louise could go in there at some point. It's not, it's flawless. It's a beautiful film, but perfectly told. There's not a weak link or a bad moment in it. Everything, editing, sound, acting, whatever you want to do, directions, perfect.
Yeah.
And gets me every single time.
Yeah.
Actually, there's one other bit as well, the bit when they drive, and it's not even anyone acting in it. It's a bit where they drive away and the photographs fall out of the back of the car.
Yeah.
That bit, just because it's sort of like a foreshadowing as well, but also leaving their old lives behind. Just that show don't tell, just that visual, and you're like, there's so many. It's giving me goosebumps now thinking about it. And just the desert is a character, and like you say, the way they get more tanned and their clothing changes. It's not just they've got
atmosphere starts to settle in of this like driving. We're getting closer now. We're getting closer to it, and just it's kind of creepy almost, the atmosphere that settles in.
It's yeah. Well, Abby, what can I say? An amazing 3 films, but I wouldn't expect anything less from you. And amazingly put. I'm gonna probably have to chop this into 2 episodes. So if you've stuck around, we'll do this over a couple of weeks because it's such a good chat, and I'm really appreciative of the amount of detail and depth you've gone into. And I knew we were gonna cover a load of subjects as well. So I'm really thankful for that. Thank you so much. So
Thank you.
Before we go, where can people follow you? Where can people check out your incredible feminist Barbie and your zines and all this sort of stuff as well?
So I'm Instagram, and that's the best place to get me, really. And I do answer my DMs. I'm at Abigail Tarttelin _. I know it's, but it's written like that.
I'll put it in show notes as well.
Cool. ABIGAIL TARTTELIN _ That's me. Such a long name. I should have just gone with. I was just going to put my initials. I should have just gone with it.
Oh well.
And that's a good place to kind of come and just see all my stuff. And in terms of work I have out to buy right now, my latest novel, Dead Girls, is a
banger.
It's pretty compulsive crime thriller with a twist, really different, really psychological, about this 11-year-old girl whose best friend goes missing, and quite early on in the book you find out she's been taken and killed. And so Thera, the lead character, decides, well, I'm her best friend, like it's my job to hunt down her killer. And you think like, oh, she's a little girl, bless her, what's going to happen to her? Is she going to be in danger? Well, she might just be pretty effing dangerous herself.
It's a great, yeah. Dead Girls, I would really recommend that. It's yeah, it's an amazing book. What can I say? Check it out. All right
Thank you
then.
so much for having me on.
No worries. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Sorry, what was that again? Sorry, I spoke over you.
I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun to talk about my favorite films, and hope you have me back sometime in the future.
Oh, definitely. There were so many other little pathways we were going off there as well. I think I definitely have to come back. We need to talk about the joy of Terminator as well.
Yeah, I can do my 4, 5, and 6 favorite films.
Yeah. What's your Sarah Connor impression again? It's like John.
John. What does she say? She says she's doing at the bench with the
That's it. Yeah.
John or something.
John. Yeah. Like no fate, but we make for ourselves. Oh.
Yeah, I love her.
One of my favorite films. Anyway, yes, so cheers. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll definitely have you on again, and have yourself a lovely day.
Thank you. I will. You too.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.